The Justice Department says it will continue to release more of the Epstein files on a rolling basis, blaming any delays on releasing all of the files on the time-consuming process of obscuring victims' names and other identifying information.
But just the sheer amount of people with insane amounts of money that are attached to them. What a crazy operation they were running. What a crazy thing. To have a bunch of people fly them out to an island that somehow or another you own. Have you ever seen that video?
No.
Pull that video up.
Have you ever had a personal relationship with Donald Trump?
What do you mean by personal relationships?
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
As the newest Epstein files were made public, Joe Rogan had a lot to say. On his podcast, he highlighted one detail that instantly stood out to him: the timing. Rogan noted that as soon as these documents began surfacing, influential figures went silent, dropped out of sight, or were suddenly out of the country.
People that are in the position to actually know the people's names on the list, those people are probably in trouble.
Yeah.
Because that's a crazy piece of information to have.
Look.
No one's been tried. No one's been brought. No one's been discussed. We know who went there. We know flight logs. No one talks about anything. There's no effort to prosecute. There's no effort to... And then you have Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in jail for trafficking to...
Rogan questioned why this pattern seems to repeat whenever damaging information comes out. The claims exploded online after the U.S. Department of Justice released thousands of newly unsealed documents linked to Jeffrey Epstein. The files contain photos, summaries of testimony, and government records related to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence. Their release was mandated by the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a law designed to force the government to make all remaining unclassified material public. Still, large portions remain heavily redacted. Transparency advocates say the public is only seeing fragments of the real story. Things grew even more suspicious when journalists noticed that at least 16 files abruptly vanished from the DOJ website. One of those reportedly contained a photo of President Donald Trump.
That included an image of President Trump appears to have been removed from the Justice Department's Epstein Files website shortly after it was published. The image was part of a new batch of files related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation published Friday. The file, numbered 468, was missing as of Saturday at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time, with the site skipping from 467 to 469.
You can see in that photo, there's photographs of women. And so we learned after releasing that photograph that there were concerns about those women and the fact that we had put that photo up. So we pulled that photo down. It has nothing to do with President Trump. We're still investigating that photo. The photo will go back up, and the only question is whether there will be redactions on the photo.
Many of the files have redactions, some of which appear to be applied inconsistently. Content is redacted in some instances, but not others. In some cases, whole pages and even whole documents are redacted, as my colleague Jake Tapper points out here.
It's just 100 pages of redaction. That's the transparency we're getting here.
What the Justice Department told Congress in a letter is that it believes it can black out information to protect victims, despite a law that required all files to be released and allowing for defined categories to protect the victims. The Justice Department didn't meet a 30-day congressionally imposed deadline requiring it to release all the documents.
We are complying with the statute. We will continue to comply with the statute. And if by complying with the statute, we don't produce everything on Friday, we produce things next week and the week after, that's still compliance with the statute.
President Trump was headed down here to Palm Beach as these files were released. He's said before that he got to know Epstein as part of the social circle in this wealthy enclave. The Trump administration has lost plenty of credibility when it comes to the handling of these documents, and the missing files and redacted information are only likely to add fuel to public suspicion that the government is hiding information about Epstein. Analysis by CNN also found that Trump's name and appearance were limited, while there appears to be a heavy dose of former President Bill Clinton, which a Clinton spokesperson said amounted to the Trump administration, quote, shielding themselves from what comes next or from what they'll try and hide from.
Joe Rogan sees that kind of disappearance as a major warning sign. If files start vanishing after release, it suggests someone is uneasy. Even with the redactions, some critical revelations surfaced. One document confirms that the FBI was alerted to Epstein years before his first arrest. In 1996, survivor Maria Farmer contacted the FBI with serious accusations. According to the records, no meaningful action was taken.
a big triumph to finally get some documents. And one of the documents we received and were able to pull out very quickly was the confirmation that Maria actually did this report in 1996, just as she's been saying for a very long time. So that's triumphant, but it's also tragic because to have to wait 30 years to have some kind of justice and accountability is truly tragic. I certainly think there's much more to this story than was acknowledged previously. And that's why we're delighted that at least some of the files have been released. Not all of the files, approximately half is what we've been told. But there's many in those files, and I've just been scouring them very quickly myself, that already are in the public domain. They released all the FOIA requests, all the FBI vault that we already knew about. But just to double back 1 minute for what happened with Maria, if I may. What happened with Maria, she reported Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, but she also reported his child pornography. And that is another terrible illegality. And that's something that the government failed to even address in their efforts to prosecute either Epstein or Maxwell. And that is truly tragic.
Following the release, Farmer spoke out publicly, saying she finally felt acknowledged. She described the moment as redemptive, calling it one of the best days of her life. The files also include newly released grand jury transcripts, detailing interviews with multiple underage girls and young women conducted years ago. The testimony shows how long the abuse patterns continued and how many opportunities authorities had to intervene earlier. Why didn't they? Many believe it's because Epstein may have been operating as an asset for the MSAD, gathering blackmail material on American politicians to influence policy and exert control at the highest levels. Joe Rogan appeared to lend credibility to that theory through his own speculation.
Everybody wants to say he was working for the Mossad. He very well could have been. He could have been working for the CIA. He could have been a guy who was on his own, but also working with them, right? Like a guy that they used, but they never fully endorsed.
Like an asset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a guy who could move money around.
Right.
He definitely...
Good at laundering money.
The moving money around stuff was very weird because he had money through no way that anybody could ever explain.
Yeah.
He had an enormous amount of money through no way that nobody could ever explain. Which, you know, if you're state-funded, you're funded by Israel, and Israel's funded by America, and, you know, there's also NGOs and nonprofits, and there's ways to move money around where you can give this guy money.
Yeah.
So he was like... Weinstein, who is an economist, right? Weinstein's a legitimate mathematician.
Eric?
Yeah. So when Eric met him, his first inclination was he was a fraud.
He's a construct.
Yeah, a construct. And did he tell you the whole story about the girl sitting on his lap?
Yep.
So Epstein, while he's meeting with Eric Weinstein for the first time, has a beautiful girl sitting on his lap, and a woman, I shouldn't say girl. He said she was like in her 20s, and she's sitting on his lap, and he's bouncing around, so they're juggling around.
While he's asking math questions.
Yeah, talking serious. So he was obviously nerd fishing. He was fishing for nerds, and I think he caught a lot of nerds in that net. There's a lot of those 100%. Guys that wound up going to that island. They probably thought, this is great. We get to party.
Nothing's free.
And they probably felt like they were rock stars because they get to hang out with the intellectual elite on an island with a guy who's just a billionaire philanthropist who's eccentric, who just loves women. He's a professed bachelor. And it all seemed too good to be true.
It's so true.
Because it was.
Yeah.
So I think he was an asset. Whether or not it was for the Mossad strictly, or Israel strictly, or the United States strictly, whether it was a CIA thing, whatever, I don't know. But I think it was probably a part of a blackmail compromise.
Photos released with the documents are now spreading rapidly online. Many were taken during FBI searches of Epstein's properties. While several images are heavily censored, recognizable figures remain visible. Former President Bill Clinton appears in multiple photos. One shows him swimming with Ghislaine Maxwell. Another depicts him in a hot tub with a woman whose face is blacked out. Clinton has not been charged or accused in connection with Epstein. However, Joe Rogan had previously called Clinton a predator 7 years ago, nearly a year before Epstein's death.
There's major problems with the Clinton Foundation. It's not even around anymore. They shut it down.
I didn't even know that.
It's a dark legion. And meanwhile, she's doing all this Me Too talk. Her husband's a goddamn predator.
Yeah.
He's been a predator for...
Clinton has claimed that he cut ties with Epstein before Epstein's legal problems became public. But the evidence doesn't seem to fully support that claim. Another high-profile figure and alleged Epstein associate that many say the media has shielded from scrutiny is billionaire Bill Gates.
House Oversight Democrats released new photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. The images include a Ukrainian passport, Bill Gates posing with a woman whose face was redacted, a screenshot of texts discussing the sending of girls, and a photo of a foot bearing a quote from Lolita.
As more documents are expected to be released in the coming weeks, Rogan's theories about what was happening behind the scenes appear increasingly validated. Joe recently explained that the presence of famous and respected names around Epstein created a false sense of safety. If presidents and major public figures were involved, others assumed everything was legitimate. That illusion lowered people's defenses. Over time, Rogan believes some attendees thought they were simply networking or relaxing among elites, unaware that compromising information might be gathered on them. Some may not have fully understood what was happening, while others chose to overlook red flags.
Thought that it was this lovely exchange of powerful people and brilliant people, and then they were just getting dirt on all of them. Guys cheating on their wives, guys, whether knowingly or unknowingly, having sex with underage girls.
Everybody wants to be.
Maybe some guys, that was their thing.
Sure.
Because it seemed like with Epstein, that was his thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I don't think there's any evidence to either. I think it's all been. I don't think there was collected with that plea deal, and I don't think there's any list that's going to point to. There's no smoking gun. That's
I don't know about that.
I think it's all been, taken care of. I think that it's. I think you could open up every file.
But that's the truth. Why did they have all those files? Why did they parade around with these binders?
Because
and
a
say,
lot of.
Do you remember those photo ops that they said? Like, look, they did like a thing. We have the Epstein files right here, and they had binders. Like, what kind of political theater is that? If you don't really have the Epstein files, like,
probably
what is
theater.
That?
And what I mean by that is I think, like, if they are keeping something quiet, it's because it's video of underage girls, or it's video of the victims who don't want that to be out there. And the Justice Department cannot make that public. They cannot bring that to Congress. That's all sealed for their privacy, right?
Well, that is the argument. But then they're saying now that there are no files. They're saying there's no video.
I believe that. Don't you?
I don't know. I think they have video. I think if you've got an island and you want compromise on people, you can't just have.
Rogan also pointed out that plea deals often shut down investigations completely. Once a deal is reached, evidence collection stops, and whatever existed may never be recovered. He highlighted how Epstein's sentence gave him unusually lenient privileges, which only deepened suspicions about influence and power.
When you have a plea deal, nobody is collecting any evidence. You understand? Right. So it's not like we're going to collect evidence. No. The part of the plea deal is this investigation is over. You plead, you do your time in this jail where you can go out and play golf during the day, but you have to come back at night.
He was under home arrest. He would only have to go there like a couple days a week.
Right. He'd have to go to the county jail in Palm Beach
He'd have to check
during
in.
the day. Right. So that's what I'm saying is I think all that shit was
he did
scrubbed.
like weekends. I think he did like weekends in the jail.
Man,
I'm not kidding. I think they allowed him to work.
Money talks, baby.
It's not just money talks, it's influence. And the guy who's the arresting sheriff was told this guy was intelligent. Yeah, that's what he was told. So I would assume that guy's telling the truth because he's a sheriff. He's got no reason to lie, or whoever he was.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of super powerful people that are very, very, very wealthy, and they have the ability to say whether or not things get out.
And if elites truly have the ability to withhold such critical and incriminating evidence from the public, then serious questions must be asked. Rogan has often questioned why the Epstein and even the Diddy client lists have gone missing and why they frequently involve major celebrities. He suggested this fits a larger pattern. Powerful people crave privacy but are instead placed in controlled environments. High-profile individuals can't move freely, so they depend on trusted intermediaries who promise discretion and protection. Epstein positioned himself as exactly that kind of gatekeeper.
Get rich, powerful people. So here's the thing that happens with rich, powerful people. They can't go anywhere, right? If you're, like, say, a Jeff Bezos type or someone who's like an Elon Musk type. And I'm not accusing them of anything. I'm just saying at that caliber of celebrity and that caliber of prominence, you can't go anywhere. If you're Bill Clinton back in the 80s or the 90s, whatever it was, you can't go party. Right. Everybody knows who you are. You got to be protected, right? But you want these experiences. And so you have these guys, like a Jeffrey Epstein type guy, who works with the elite of the elite clientele. It's all movie stars, big-time politicians, world leaders, scientists, Nobel Prize winners, and they all meet together and have fascinating conversations and cocktails, and there's beautiful girls everywhere. Of course. What a great idea.
Right.
And if you're naive and you don't understand honeypots.
Here's the quote from Maria Farmer, who was one of the accusers from what was inside the house in New York.
Okay, she said, there were monitors inside this cabinet. I looked on the cameras and I saw toilet, bed, toilet. She said, visibly spooked. Like, I'm never going to use the restroom here and I'm never going to sleep here. You know what I mean? It was very obvious that they were like monitoring private moments. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Maria Farmer was the one who worked at Epstein's office in New York, I think.
And this was the house, Jamie?
Yeah, I was looking up stuff on the house. That was like what they
I
found.
wonder if the
in
house still
too.
has fucking cameras in it somewhere that they haven't found yet.
They definitely, don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to scan the out of that house. You'd have to take the walls apart. There's probably listening devices inside the walls. Like, who knows? If this was like really an intelligence operation, yeah, they probably had that house fully.
Rogan concluded that from an intelligence perspective, the Epstein operation made sense. If someone wanted leverage over powerful decision makers, creating spaces where people felt safe enough to lower their guard would be an effective strategy.
You gotta think, man, if a guy like that is running these kind of parties with all these rich and powerful people, how many different worldwide decisions can be manipulated because of these people and the compromises you have on them?
Right.
It's really a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah.
From an intelligence perspective.
And it appears the release of these images could put major names at risk, so much so that the government is now attempting to remove information it already released to shield certain figures, including Donald Trump. During a recent interview, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche was directly asked why the files were taken down and whether a judge ordered it. Blanche said the files were removed due to concerns over images that included women. He insisted the decision had nothing to do with Trump, arguing that photos of Trump with Epstein have been public for years. According to Blanche, the idea that the DOJ would erase files to protect Trump was absurd.
The absurdity of us pulling down a photo, a single photo, because President Trump was in it, is laughable. And the fact that everybody's trying to act like that's the case is a reflection of their true motivation. But the reality is anybody, any victim's lawyers, any victim rights group can reach out to us and say, hey, Department of Justice, there's a document, there's a photo, there's something within the Epstein files that identifies me, and we will then, of course, pull that off and investigate it.
Are you saying that one or more of the women in one of the photos or several of the photos is a victim or a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, and that's why you took those files down? And will they be put back up?
No, that's not what I'm saying. We, of course, if we knew that, if we believed that photograph contained a survivor, we wouldn't have put it up in the first place without redacting the faces. But notwithstanding what we believe, we don't have perfect information. And so when we hear from victims' rights groups about this type of photograph, we pull it down and investigate. We're still investigating that photo. The photo will go back up, and the only question is whether there will be redactions on the photo. And of course, if there are survivors in any of the photos, we will redact them as Congress expects us to do, as President Trump expects us to do, and as the Attorney General and Director Patel have directed the department.
Critics weren't satisfied. Commentators noted that Blanche failed to give a clear explanation for why the files disappeared in the first place. They also pointed out that Blanche previously served as Trump's personal criminal defense attorney, raising serious conflict of interest concerns. The Epstein saga has never been simple, and investigative journalist Whitney Webb says that's by design. She argues the scandal implicates powerful figures on both sides of the political aisle, which is why no one in Washington seems eager to fully expose it. Everyone fears the public backlash and what the truth could reveal. Instead of confronting it head-on, leaders have spent months stalling, distracting, and deliberately trying to make the story disappear.
The fact that Leslie Wexner has never been investigated for his role in the Epstein scandal is absolutely bonkers. Do what you can to extricate yourself and your family from this power structure that is predatory, it's evil, it kids. The music industry had become tied up with the private prison industry. An asset is definitely fair to say, at the very least. If they want to blackmail you or know something about you, they just access what Palantir sucked up about you.
Like, what are we doing?
Well, Epstein was interested in Chomsky for AI purposes.
If journalists did at all their jobs, every 4 sentences that you say should be 4 weeks of news coverage doing in-depth education of the American public. Are you ever worried about drawing attention for the kind of research and reporting that you do?
In the 2024 campaign, there was a lot of signaling, not just from Trump, but from, J.D. Vance and some of these other figures, some of Trump's children, on social media, and I believe also interviews, basically promising the release of Epstein documents if Trump were to be elected. And this is also true of things that were stated by the current FBI director and FBI deputy director. And, a few months before things really exploded with Trump getting kind of feisty on his social media posts, we had, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and sort of basically come out and say Epstein definitely killed himself and all this stuff. And then Pam Bondi, kind of followed suit. And then they released this video that has a minute missing, which obviously, is going to make people that think Epstein didn't kill himself, or at least didn't kill himself without help from the outside. It's not going to put any conspiracies to rest if there's like a minute plus missing, and then the metadata shows that the video was edited. And so there's been all this backpedaling, but it's very bizarre that they would mishandle this so extensively. I mean, maybe they thought that the base didn't really care that much, or that they could distract them.
Whitney says that if officials were attempting to conceal something truly serious, their behavior would look exactly like this. She believes the files may contain information that is merely embarrassing for some and devastating for others, not just Trump, but people close to him as well. That could explain why promised disclosures continue to be delayed.
Now, I think now they're trying to use the distraction or develop new distractions, as soon as this kind of boiled over and really kind of splintered and angered a large segment of Trump's base. There were releases of, documents on the MLK assassination, and Tulsi Gabbard has now been releasing stuff on Russiagate, and Trump is putting all this stuff, like AI videos of Obama getting arrested. So now it's kind of trying to shift gears and get the base riled up about something else and be like, please forget about the Jeffrey Epstein case. But it's kind of, it's really bizarre. Particularly the most bizarre of it all would be Trump's own response. He obviously fails to understand how a large segment of his base feels about this case by trying to, wash it away and call it a Democrat-invented hoax. Yeah, so, my opinion generally is that some figures in the Trump administration were kind of chosen as a PR move, and that they're not actually in charge of what they're nominally in charge of. So like Pete Hegseth, head of the Pentagon, he's kind of a Fox and Friends, he's a TV show host. And the deputy director of the Pentagon, Steve Feinberg of Cerberus Capital, is most likely the person actually running the Pentagon, not Hegseth, in my opinion. And I think that's true also for RFK Jr. in charge of HHS. I don't really think he's running. He's just kind of this figure that connected with Trump's base, particularly during the COVID era, and made them think reforms would come. And those reforms haven't really come, but he's kind of there to give the impression that things have changed. But the person behind him, the deputy secretary, is Jim O'Neill, who's a career affiliate of Peter Thiel, who's also the power behind J.D. Vance and, the man that made Palantir what it is. And so, I think it's just a way of sort of masking the people that are actually running stuff. And I think that's probably true, too, of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who were basically out there. They were making the rounds on podcasts and were making these connections and building trust and relationships with the public in Trump space. But it seems like they're not actually running anything, in my opinion. They're kind of figureheads in a way, and they're willing figureheads.
Whitney also claims Epstein was an FBI informant during this period, a detail that surfaced through court records from earlier cases. If true, it raises major questions about who knew what and when. So what do you think the real truth is? Let us know in the comments below.